I use AI like ChatGPT, among others, almost every day in my medical practice. And I want to tell you about two situations where the answers were smart, logical, and still would have led to the wrong outcome for the patient. Not because AI is bad, but because in biology, context changes everything. So if you're using AI to understand your health, supplements, or lab results, then this distinction could matter more than you realize. So let me show you exactly where things went sideways. Both of these examples come from real patients of mine who I've worked with, though fully anonymous, but very representative of the kinds of people I see. Highly motivated, intelligent, actively trying to do the right thing for their health. And they were researching, asking good questions, and like many people now, using AI tools to help make sense of their complex information. Which makes sense. There's more health information than ever, and no one can possibly process it all alone. Personally, I'll just share, I am a huge fan of my patients using ChatGPT or other LLMs to come to me with better questions. But here's the problem. Health isn't just about having answers. It's about knowing which answers actually apply to you. AI is excellent at pattern recognition, as we know. It synthesizes huge amounts of information extremely quickly, and it sounds very confident doing it. And in both of these cases, the answers were not absurd. They weren't reckless. They were incomplete. And this is where medicine, whether it's rushed clinical care or AI, often falls short. It looks at pieces instead of systems, and biology doesn't work in pieces. Example number one. So this first case involved a patient who is extremely sensitive to supplements, very reactive, very easy to overstimulate. During a discussion with an AI assistant, a suggestion came up that combining NAC with bone broth could support NAD pathways. And on the surface, that sounds intelligent, especially when it gives the answer to you so confidently. But here's the distinction. Glutathione is like the body's cleanup crew. It helps neutralize oxidative stress and keeps the internal environment stable. NAC plus bone broth helps build that cleanup crew, the glutathione cleanup crew. NAD, on the other hand, which it first suggested, is more like the cell's electrical currency. And it's what allows your mitochondria to move energy and keep the lights on. One cleans up the mess, the other powers the system. And when the body is under high oxidative stress, it burns through NAD faster. So improving glutathione can certainly preserve NAD indirectly, but preserving NAD is not the same as building NAD. And in this patient's case, pushing NAD precursors directly made him feel awful, wired, overstimulated, dysregulated. This wasn't toxicity, it was overstimulation relative to his body's ability to buffer it. So the AI didn't fail, the context changed the meaning. But again, just to highlight it, NAC plus bone broth does not equal NAD. NAC plus bone broth is much more likely to produce or upregulate your body's making of more glutathione. Now, example number two. So this example involves bone health, not to be confused with bone broth in the first example. This is around bone health. There's a particular lab that measures how quickly bone is being broken down and rebuilt. And I'll oftentimes do this in folks over 50 or 60 years old. Lower numbers often get labeled as good. And if you asked an AI to interpret that number in isolation, it might reasonably say less breakdown is a good thing. Less bone breakdown is a good thing. But here's what that misses. Bone is a living tissue. In a healthy person, your entire skeleton turns over about every 7 years. So it's constantly breaking it down and building it back up. That's what I mean by a living tissue. Old bone is removed, new bone is built. And that renewal is how bone stays strong. And this is where context matters. In older adults, especially those who are less active, have low protein intake, maybe low hormones, or have been on long-term bone medications, turnover can become too slow or too suppressed. And boom, land. That stress creates little micro damage in the bones, and that's how it strengthens. So it breaks down, but then that actually gives the bone a chance to grow stronger. So bone can actually become more brittle, even when the numbers look perfect, especially in those situations that I mentioned, where hormones might be low, again, maybe less active, maybe less protein is being taken in, or certain medications can do that too. So a very low bone turnover marker isn't automatically reassuring. Bone health isn't about stopping breakdown. It's about healthy renewal. Again, a reasonable interpretation by the AI, but missing the context completely. And as a clear example of, hey, AI, or hey, ChatGPT, I have this number on my lab results. Is it a good number? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It depends, because the context completely matters. So here's the bigger pattern. Large language models are excellent at recognizing patterns, synthesizing information, and explaining concepts clearly. I myself, for example, will sometimes actually ask ChatGPT to help if I'm trying to explain something to a patient in the patient portal or via an email, but it's like my wording is just not, like, I understand the concept, but the wording is not. I'm like, hey, throw it in ChatGPT and say, hey, make this in so a layperson can understand it. So it's great in that context. Even then, though, I have to reread and make sure that ChatGPT's response or output is actually accurate, because it's not always. And, I'll just use a little bit of a metaphor. So in biology, in our human body, usually it doesn't just like shout. It's usually much more of a whisper. And, I think of it as, if you only listen to AI and its fluency, then you're going to miss the quiet physiological signal, because biology isn't just information. It's timing, it's thresholds, it's tolerance, and the individual sitting in front of me. People often say, think of AI like a very smart intern. I'll be honest with you, it's probably much more like, think of AI as the smartest doctor you've ever encountered, and probably in 6 months, 12 months, it'll be even smarter than the smartest doctor who's ever lived. However, we've probably all experienced the kind of doctor who's incredibly intelligent, but has absolutely no bedside manner. They might give technically correct information, but it's completely disconnected from the human in front of them. Again, context changes everything. I'm curious if you've experienced that, though, because I certainly have. Fortunately, not so much as a patient, but as a medical student, as an intern, as a resident, going through those 7 years of training, I saw so many doctors who they were brilliant, like book smart brilliant. And they might give great advice, but it totally landed with a complete thud, because there's no connection, and they did not understand that what they were saying to the patient would be completely go over their head, or it just wasn't something that patient was ready for or could implement reasonably for a number of potential reasons into their life. So that's still the risk when intelligence AI, for example, is not grounded in context. So how do I use AI? I do not use AI to make decisions for me. I do not use AI to make health decisions that just sound smart from me to give to patients. I do use it to explore possibilities, pressure test my ideas, and explain concepts. Then I filter everything through physiology, experience, and the individual sitting in front of me or on the other side of the screen. So if you're using AI for your health, use it to ask better questions, not to outsource discernment. Your body is not an algorithm, and context changes everything. Use AI wisely.